Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to this dose of celestial goodness. As always, thank you for joining me in this space and on this journey. I appreciate your time and your presence. So, in making the decision to ease into this new year, I did something that was a little unusual for me. I actually pre-scheduled downtime. I know. Insert a very audible gasp here. So this included time for reading, resting, and for listening to my own heart. Yes, that is correct. I schedule time to intentionally listen to my heart. Listening to one's heart is not something that I actually feel like modern society encourages. In fact, I think we're more encouraged to follow the mind, to be logical, practical, and reasonable. In law school, there was much mention and jokes of the reasonable man. According to Justia, this is a phrase used to denote a hypothetical person who exercises qualities of attention, knowledge, intelligence, and judgment that society requires of its members for the protection of their own interest and the interest of others. There's a certain amount of caution that this person takes, and then they behave sensibly, according to the standards of society. This generally leans more towards the logical and the rational. The logical and the rational are jurisdictions of the mind. The heart, however, is more emotional and often seen as irrational. The heart is usually more willing to take a risk, and these are risks that the mind won't take. The domain of the heart is love. Sometimes the heart and the mind are in conflict, and when they are, we are often encouraged to make the common sense choice and to follow the mind. I have found that the mind can lead to overthinking, notorious overthinker, which can lead to anxiety and which can actually lead to sadness because ultimately we didn't follow the heart. And this can express itself with everything from relationships to career paths, just to almost anything. I'm of the mindset, though, that we should let love lead our actions. That the mind should bow to the wisdom of the heart. And yet, how many of us know with certainty what it is that our heart is trying to tell us? And how will we know if we never, ever make time to listen to what it has to say? So, there's a quote by Jack Kornfield, which I came across in Bell Hook's seminal book, All About Love, New Visions. And it says, "It is possible to speak with our heart directly. Most ancient cultures know this. We can actually converse with our heart as if we were a good friend." They, or we, whatever. Essentially, we can converse with the heart as if they were a good friend. In modern life, we have become so busy with our daily affairs and thoughts that we have lost this essential art of taking time to converse with our heart. So I say, what say you, heart? If you have been listening or to this channel or reading my blog long enough, you know of my long-standing love of Paulo Coelho's books, and The Alchemist especially, which is probably my favorite book of all time. There is also mention of listening to the heart there as well. "Why do we listen to our hearts?" the boy asked when they had made camp that day. "Because wherever your heart is, that is where you'll find your treasure." "But my heart is agitated," the boy said. "It has dreams, it gets emotional, and it becomes passionate over a woman of the desert. It asks things of me, and it keeps me from sleeping many nights when I think about her." Well, that's good. Your heart is alive. Keep listening to what it has to say. When I made the decision to ease into 2023, as I mentioned before, I did something that was out of the ordinary for my normal extroverted self. I blocked off 2 weeks where my calendar said, do not plan anything. There were a few exceptions, but for the most part, I stuck with it. This is a big deal for me because when I'm just generally always out and about with some downtime, which usually comes when I start to feel burnt out. And then my friends will gently or not so gently say, ma'am, it might be time for some downtime. So that's when I'll do it. But I savor life and I love to soak up every minute of it. But now I'm learning through the wisdom of my own heart that sometimes for me this includes hermit time. So this is time spent in solitude, resting, reflecting, and talking to myself. I mean, when we need expert advice on life, on our own life, we have to talk to ourselves because we're the expert. So I joked to one of my friends recently that I was enjoying my downtime so much that I could probably become a hermit very easily. And her response was a resounding, yeah, no, I give you 3 days alone by yourself max before we call in reinforcements to get you to leave the house. And that's just funny because I do thrive on time with my friends and family. So point taken, there has to be a balance. Now, the last year ended and this year began on a Mercury retrograde in the sign of Capricorn, a sign that has very heavy influence in my own natal chart. My own Mercury placement is in Capricorn, and so the energy was ripe for slowing down, reflecting, and finding some time to refresh my spirit. So much happened last year, and so much happened all at once, it felt like sometimes, that I couldn't even catch my breath. I don't think I had much time to process, and I like to process and excavate and see what, if any, lessons there were to learn from situations and experiences that pop up in my life. I probably could have been an archaeology major very easily, but since that wasn't my path, I have to be the archaeologist of my own life. So while some things will and should remain buried, when we look objectively, or when we can look objectively at our life and at our own life, there's really opportunity for growth. So maybe there are situations where I could have reacted differently. Maybe there are places in my life where I need to be more proactive, or maybe there's still things that I'm learning, like patience, for example. I decided to take this intentional time for processing and reflecting. So intentionality has become very important to me, and it was with this in mind that I sat down and I drafted up a vision for the future from this point, and I came up with my word for the year. For the past several years, I have selected a word that helps to anchor me to a particular goal or intention for the year. And some examples have been flow and balance and abundance and fun. And this year, my word is devotion. I also have a word for this decade of my life, and that one is a little bit more private and personal, but it feels delicious to the spirit. So this year's word is devotion. And I wrote a short snippet about it on social media, and I said, this year's word is devotion. Devotion to my heart, to love, to joy, to the joy of living, to beauty and to kindness, to my own well-being, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. It is also devotion to my enjoyment, to my quirks, and to my tribe. Devotion is my anchor word. It signifies love and loyalty and enthusiasm. I was actually out on a walk through the park when I was thinking about this more deeply. What does devotion to love and to life even look like? what was love even? And whenever I have a deep question, a book with answers will always find me. In this case, as I was dusting my bookshelf, one of my bookshelves, my copy of All About Love by Bell Hooks fell on my toe. That was a sure sign that this wasn't accidental. And there's so many good parts to this book. I mean, it's a love letter in and of itself to remaining hopeful about love in a cynical world. And one of the passages says this, which I think is very beautiful. Love redeems. Despite all the lovelessness that surrounds us, nothing has been able to block our longing for love, the intensity of our yearning. The understanding that love redeems appears to be a resilient aspect of the heart's knowledge. The healing power of redemptive love lures us and calls us towards the possibility of healing. We cannot account for the presence of the heart's knowledge. Like all great mysteries, we are all mysteriously called to love, no matter the conditions of our lives, the degree of our depravity or despair. The persistence of this call gives us reason to hope. Without hope, we cannot return to love. Breaking our sense of isolation and opening up the window of opportunity, hope provides us with a reason to go forward. It is a practice of positive thinking. Being positive, living in a permanent state of hopefulness, renews the spirit. Renewing our faith in love's promise, hope is our covenant. I began thinking and writing about love when I heard cynicism instead of hope in the voices of young and old. Cynicism is the greatest barrier to love. It is rooted in doubt and despair. Fear intensifies our doubt. It paralyzes. Faith and hope allow us to let fear go. Fear stands in the way of love. When we love, we no longer allow our hearts to be held captive by fear. This echoes beautifully what Marianne Williamson said in A Return to Love, Reflections on A Course in Miracles. She said, "Love is what we're born with. Fear is what we've learned here. The spiritual journey is the relinquishing or unlearning of fear and the acceptance of love back into our hearts. Love is the essential existential fact. It is our ultimate reality and our purpose on earth. To be consciously aware of it, to experience it in ourselves and others, is the meaning of life. In devotion to love and to life, I am cognizant that will require vulnerability. It also feels like we have become a society of people who are afraid in some sense to be vulnerable with each other, to go beneath the surface and to allow others to see the things that even frighten us about ourselves. Yet it is diving deeply and being vulnerable where the true opportunity for meaningful connections lie. As Brené Brown said, we cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be deeply seen and known, and when we honor the spiritual connection that grows from that offering with trust, respect, kindness, and affection. Love is not something we give or get. It is something that we nurture and grow, a connection that can only be cultivated between two people when it exists within each one of them. We can only love others as much as we love ourselves. Shame, blame, disrespect, betrayal, and the withholding of affection damage the roots from which love grows. Love can only survive these injuries if they are acknowledged, healed, And why did I write rare? And I'm guessing the word is not rare, but made aware, addressed. Anyway, we have to address the parts of us that need healing, And I don't know yet how the intentional selection of a word like devotion and adding vulnerability and love to that equation will unfold over this year. I do think that it will offer some beautiful moments, some lovely conversations with people and with myself, and it will also offer some deeply meaningful experiences, rooted in the tenderness, the loveliness, and the joy that is also inherent in life. It is work, though. In all of the aforementioned works, there has also been mention of acknowledging where we have a wounding and thinking about how we can heal the wound so that we can experience life from a more joyous place. And I fully acknowledge that for some people, their trauma is very intense. And I will always advocate for therapy and anything that helps people to take care of their entire well-being. So in another post, I will talk about the wounds we carry and make an astrological connection, of course, to Chiron, the wounded healer, the centaur. We'll discuss how wounds also appear in our natal chart, and once we learn how to overcome those wounds, how our own test can often become a testimony for others. Where was our first wounding? Where was our first conscious recollection of love? Life does not come with a manual for living or for loving. They're just things that we learn along the way, whether for the good or for the bad. And if ever we are to devote ourselves to love and to life, really, then those questions are also important elements to the equation. I've asked myself, where was my first abandonment? What are the wounds of my own inner child? And how can I let her know that we grew up and that we're okay now, so we don't have to react with anything but love? How do I console her when she is triggered and frightened? And how do I soothe her into realizing that we don't have to react in old ways to new situations? I really don't have all the answers, or any answers, really, just yet. These are just things to think about, right? And for now, I'm just wondering, do you have a word? Have you made it this far into the video? Do you ever listen to the sound of your heart? Not just the beating, but the wisdom that it's trying to express to you. Or are you someone who's more led by your mind? There are no right or wrong answers to these questions. But as I think about how I want the year, and quite frankly, just the rest of my life to unfold, I know that I want my mind and my heart to be able to co-create together. I want my mind to bow to the wisdom of the great mysteries of the heart. And I want my heart to appreciate that the mind wants to offer its protection so as to minimize hurt, but to recognize that hurt is an inherent risk when we make a decision to fully reveal ourselves. And to reveal ourselves fully, right? So despite that, there is still life after hurt. And I want to listen to the soul of the world and to my own heart, and then take action from that point and place. Regardless of what happens, I want to exude love as my natural state of being. I want to embody love and to remind all of us that it is the most important part of living. So, I hope that you have a wonderful week, that it's filled with beautiful reminders of love. I hope that the stars shine brightly over you, and I hope that you are able to hear the wisdom of your heart and to feel the devotion that your heart has had to you all along. So, thank you. Have a wonderful week.